President Biden sort of set off the left after rejecting calls to defund the police over the weekend and promising more resources for law enforcement during a historic surge in violent crime.
2020 was the deadliest year for law enforcement on record. And today, we're here to remember nearly 500 of your brothers and sisters. There are going to be more resources, not fewer resources, to help you do your job. That's why I propose we invest again in community policing. We know works. One thing that protects cops is another cop.
So, Greg, that's a convenient narrative now. Would have been better off last summer when this whole crime surge started.
I guess this was occurring during National Police Week, right? Which is, I think CNN calls it the National Appreciation of White Supremacy. Yeah. So I don't know if they covered it. Thank you for joining us in the real world. But where were you when the cities were burning, cops were getting attacked? He couldn't take a stand because that stand aligned himself with Trump. So he let politics replace his spine and he retreated to his basement as this country burned. Billions and billions of dollars worth of damages, people dying, cops committing suicide. And the only reason why he's talking about it now is because it's a political weapon to use against the Republicans by tying it to January 6th. But it falls apart because his inconsistencies expose that truth. He didn't give a damn about cops. He didn't give a single damn about cops before January 6th. Now he does. So screw him. I know that I should be more diplomatic and say I'm glad he finally came around, but I'm so cynical at this point because he didn't do jack for so long. It actually infuriates me. And it's hard to infuriate me, Dana.
I know. You have a very, very calm temper.
I'm jovial most of the time.
I know.
You're also a wonderful diplomat.
He's mad.
Yeah, I'm very mad right now, Dana, very mad.
But Dana, on that, the cynical point, you know, Democrats were getting destroyed when it came to the defund the police issue in the South Carolina Senate race, in the Virginia House races. So is this a way to kind of change the narrative ahead of 2022?
I think in a way, one of the reasons it's cynical and it's frustrating is that you actually believe that that is the real Joe Biden speaking. If you go back to 1994 and the crime bill then, things he has said in the past, his support for police, and then there was this political moment and he did not stand up when you needed him to. So then you think, well, will the real Joe Biden please stand up? If crime is in the headlines, President Biden knows that he's losing because that is something that everybody will pay attention to. And the first story that will always get covered is going to be crime. And so like Inspector Gadget, the left's message is self-destructing. And it's not just on this issue. I would say it's also happening on immigration. What happened this weekend? The Biden administration says they're going to return to the remain in Mexico policy that President Trump had. And the left-wing people that were on the Zoom call with the Biden administration walked out of the meeting. They found out this week that it's likely that the climate proposals and the big infrastructure bill are going to be pulled out. So they're dejected over that. They're depressed because the Biden administration will not be able to deliver on this voting rights bill that they want to pass. So all of this is leading the president to maybe rethink some things.
You know, Jesse, the speech from President Biden over the weekend had a lot of nice things that he said, but personnel is policy. And if you look at DOJ and you look at Kristen Clark or Anita Gupta, both people who called to defund the police, who believe the whole system is racist, those are the people running the show when it comes to investigations and policies on a federal level for police departments across the country. And they haven't really offered much in terms of backing the police in the way that the president called for.
That's why people think he's a puppet, because he doesn't even pick his own people to staff some of these departments. You guys are both right. He was anti-crime in the 90s, and he tacked back during the primary when he was getting hammered. Then after Floyd, he said, oh, we have systemic racism in our police departments, but we should redirect funding from the police. And then he hid in silence in his basement. And then when he saw the Democrats almost lose the House in November because of this, he tried to tack back again. So that's why no one trusts him. He's too wishy-washy. And he hasn't even pushed his anti-crime and police reform bills through Congress. He controls both houses, and they're both DOA. Police departments need strong leadership, vocal support from the commander-in-chief, because they're putting their lives on the line. They're making split-second calls, car pursuits, foot pursuits, dealing with some of the most horrific people, as Greg says, people on their worst days in America. And they're just going to retire, stick around and stay in their squad cars, not do proactive policing if they're not getting vocal support from the White House. And that's what we're seeing right now. He has to convince his party to be less anti-police if he's going to stand a shot for people to believe him.
Yeah, well, now guys that put their lives on the line every day for decades are getting fired because they won't comply with Biden's vaccine mandate. Richard, what is the Democrats' plan to handle this new crime wave? What are they going to do about it?
Well, look, I can't speak to, I'm not a lawmaker, but I think what can be done is, because I don't think it's about defunding the police. I don't think you can mandate policy via hashtag. But I think what we've got to do is, one, end bad policing practices like stop and frisk, profiling, excessive over-policing, and actually focus on how we do policing better, right? Because what you have...
What about the criminals? What are you doing about the criminals?
Hold on a second.
He's talking about the criminals.
I'm not talking about the criminals.
Yeah, I think it's the police.
I said nothing like that.
But that's what you went and you did that wish list of things that is decimated.
Excuse me.
She asked you how you deal with crime, and you went after the police.
I'm getting there, right? What you have is this. When you talk to communities of color, when you talk to black communities, what they tell you is that 64% of them favor street patrols, 60% of them favor more money going towards reform and training, and you also have communities that say there's a fear and mistrust when it comes to police, and police cannot be effective if the people who they need to be effective towards don't trust them. So what you've got to do is have reform in place so that when you call 911, you're going to trust the person on the other end of the phone. And when communities don't trust who's on the other end of the phone or who's going to show up when they call 911, we have a problem. And until we're willing to acknowledge that problem exists, we'll continue to have this circular conversation that gets us nowhere, which is where we are right now.
I don't think we're in a circular conversation.
Exactly.
No,
because
it's not.
That's exactly where we are.
No,
Republicans believe one thing, Democrats believe something else, and we're in a circular conversation.
We refuse to fall into this prison of two ideas. Okay. There is so many options on the table, but the moment that you defend the police at all, then you're considered a racist.
Right.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.